Well, it's that time of year again. Much like Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, and Sharknado, Equestria Girls has now become a yearly thing. Not that I'm complaining though. After the near home run that was Rainbow Rocks, I gladly welcome the news of another installment. Though in all honesty, the news of an actual My Little Pony movie is much better, because now I can think about for the last time, that is not what I want out of a My Little Pony movie. Why do people think this? Just because Applejack is my favorite pony does not mean that— Stop it! Anyway, before I get interrupted by Michael Bay's version of Applejack, let's talk about friendship games. Our story begins not too long after the end of Rainbow Rocks. Sunset Shimmer, now the official leader of the Human World's version of the main six, has taken to writing in her journal to ask Twilight for any advice on friendship. Though it seems nowadays that Twilight has become fairly non-responsive, either through things going on in Season 5 or personal problems, or probably both. While writing in her journal, she spots a mysterious hooded girl scanning the portal to Equestria. She gives chase, but the girl escapes, and we soon find out that this mysterious girl is none other than the human version of Twilight Sparkle. Which, let's face it, shouldn't be a surprise if you stayed after the end credits of Rainbow Rocks, and if you didn't, then why'd you do that, you silly person? This Twilight is a student over at Crystal Prep, with Cadence as the dean, and the school is ruled over by a principal named Principal Cinch. Crystal Prep and Canterlot High are getting ready for an event called the Friendship Games, which is supposed to be a friendly competition that unites the schools together. But unfortunately, Crystal Prep has a bit of a competition problem, in that all they want to do is win, win, win. Of course, Twilight has no interest in the Friendship Games, and just wants to investigate the magic as part of her special studies program. However, Principal Cinch, who is seemingly aware of strange things that are happening at Canterlot, threatens to end Twilight's special studies program if she doesn't participate, so she reluctantly does. When she arrives at Canterlot High, everyone thinks that she's the original Twilight. From the students, our main characters, and
Satan himself!
Flash Sentry, Flash, who called him Satan? Anyway, it becomes apparent that she's not the original Twilight, and it also becomes apparent that Twilight holds a device that can steal magic, which activates when one of the main characters ponies up, meaning that they grow their ears and tails, and in Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash's case, wings. Not only do they have to deal with the competitive Crystal Prep, but they also have to deal with Twilight, as her magical stealing device starts to have negative effects on the world. What kind of negative effects? I'm not gonna tell you the whole thing. Sweet Celestia, who do you think I am, Wikipedia? It'd defeat the purpose of seeing the movie if I spoil the whole thing. So with the story out of the way, let's talk about the good and the not so good about friendship games. With the hint of a third installment, I got excited and a little bit worried at the same time. Excited because, you know, Rainbow Rocks was so good I couldn't wait for another installment, but also worried at the same time because of the trilogy effect. It's a common occurrence that the third film is the weakest in the trilogy, which I guess I shouldn't have been worried in the first place since there's an Equestria Girls 4, so it's technically not a trilogy. But still, given how good Rainbow Rocks was, I couldn't help but worry that Friendship Games wouldn't live up to the predecessor. So after viewing both the Discovery Kids airing and the Blu-ray, did the Friendship Games ultimately live up to Rainbow Rocks or surpass it? Unfortunately, in my opinion, I didn't think so. But don't take that to mean that I thought Friendship Games was bad. I think it's better than even the most mediocre episodes of the show. But let's not focus on the negatives of Friendship Games just yet. Instead, let's focus on the positives. What has ultimately made these films work are its characters, and Friendship Games is no different. The main six of the Equestria Girls franchise are in top form here, providing the best laughs in the character development. And Sunset Shimmer once again goes through another strong story arc, as she has to learn how to solve the conflict by herself, rather than rely upon the knowledge of the pony Twilight, which actually improves one of the minor complaints I had about Rainbow Rocks, as it brings Sunset to the forefront more than it has before. Also, I really like the characterization of the human version of Twilight, as she has all the curiosity of the equestrian version, but has the added bonus of the unintentional antagonist. She genuinely wants to learn more about magic, but in doing so she's actually hurting Sunset and her friends, which brings some nice conflict to the narrative. And the games themselves, while kinda logically off, are actually a lot of fun to watch, as there are a lot of good character moments, and the song that accompanies it is genuinely good. In fact, the music overall is just that, it's very good. I wouldn't say it's better than the songs in Rainbow Rocks, I still think Daniel Ingram shines, producing some quality work, which is accompanied by the pretty visual style of the film. Human Twilight is given a musical number that would befit a Disney princess, and there's a pretty good villain song towards the end, even though I have a few problems with it. So I think the main characters are good, I think the songs are good, I think the visual style is good, but what ultimately brings this film down? If I had to pick one thing, it would be the pacing. In the past, when I would complain about the pacing of the last two movies, it would be more of me being greedy and wanting more. In Friendship Games' case, it really needed to be a longer movie. With a lot more characters here than any other installment, that 73 minute runtime really rears its ugly head here. There's simply too much going on. With so many other characters to deal with, this just feels overcrowded. The other characters I speak of are the students of Crystal Prep. With the school being rivals, it does make sense that there would be a sort of anti-main six, and the film does take a little bit of time to establish this. But in my opinion, they don't take enough time. So much so that I can't even remember some of their names. The only two characters I can think of by name are Sour Sweet and Sugarcoat, which is most likely a good thing since the common consensus seems to be that they're scene stealers, with Sour Sweet switching personality being kind of predictable but a good source of laughs, and Sugarcoat because her name doesn't live up to her personality, which is a good thing. Her bluntness was some of my favorite moments in the film. Unfortunately, the rest didn't stand out as much, and frankly, because of that, I didn't really care who they were. They don't work as much as the main characters do, which is what I really think the film is let down by. If it was about 10, 15, or maybe even 20 minutes longer, and more time was spent on these other characters, it really would have elevated the film up, and would have softened the blow of the other big problem I have with this movie, and it's the villain. After villains like Sunset and the Dazzlings, it was really disheartening to see a villain so generic as Principal Cinch. And I only remember her name because the only other name I have for her is Evil Lady, because that's all she really is, an evil lady. Sunset and the Dazzlings were given some sort of mythology, but Principal Cinch has nothing, not even a hint of a backstory. I was actually thinking that the movie's gonna throw a curveball at us, and she was going to reveal herself as King Sombra or Queen Chrysalis, who has somehow made it to the human world. Anything that would have made her remotely interesting. And while I know this is supposed to be a movie for kids, knowing the villains we've had in the past, this is an extreme disappointment. Even her villain song, which I love on its own, probably would have been better suited as a second half thing rather than in the final third. And now let's talk about the biggest point of discussion. Flash Sentry. I actually started this review shortly before my Everything Right and Wrong with Friendship Games video, but now that I'm finishing it afterwards, I guess we should talk about this a little bit. If you recall my original Equestria Girls review, I called him interesting, and I'd like to see where he went, but then in Rainbow Rocks I called him dull and didn't really add anything to the story. Of course, my Everything Right and Wrong with video seemed to paint a very different narrative. Hey, you, get out of here. No. Shut up, Flash. No one cares about your problem. Oh, God, no. Forever alone, Flash. Forever alone. Just to name a few. So I suppose the big question is, do I hate Flash Sentry that much? And the answer would be no. I mean, granted, I have problems with him. In all three movies, he's only struck me as that stereotypical crush character. They tried to do something with him in Rainbow Rocks where he was influenced by the sirens, but even then, well. And now Twilight's crying. I know what to do. Hey, you don't make Twilight cry. Magical influence or not. I suppose my point is that there should be something more to him than just being that guy. In fact, the whole side plot of him interacting with the other Twilight, it doesn't really go anywhere. After the second time she brushes him off, it just halts. There's nothing to it anymore. Not even a smidgen of a resolution. I mean, how funny it would be if this one concluded with them as boyfriend and girlfriend, and then we have the other Twilight showing up being like, get away from my man! And then she'd finally have to move on to the pony Flash Sentry, which she should be crushing on in the first place. Oh god, I'm way too into this franchise. Also, I'm getting further and further away from my point. And the point is, I don't hate Flash Sentry. I think he's underdeveloped, I think there's problems, but I don't outright hate him. What you see in those videos is just me being a jerk for the sake of it. I mean, I don't hate characters like Jar Jar, I don't hate the twins. Why would I hate Flash Sentry with such vitriol that I would blow his face off? Alright, because it makes me laugh. Anyway. So here are my final thoughts on friendship games. There are some disappointing elements, sure, and the film isn't nearly as good as Rainbow Rocks, but it's also better than the first film. It tried some new things, and I appreciate that. An anti-main 6, Twilight is an unintentional antagonist, and even an original villain are all concepts I could get behind, but only one out of the three works. But even so, what does work works really well, such as the main characters, the humor, and the music. It's still a very good addition to the franchise, and still opens more doors to future possibilities, with a tag at the end for another installment. If you enjoyed the first two movies, then there's a definite possibility that you'll enjoy the third film, but just keep in mind that there may be a couple things that the predecessor did better. I think it's worth a look, especially if you're a fan of the franchise. And with the recent announcement of Equestria Girls 4, I am still excited to see what they bring out. I do hope they improve about what didn't work about this one. So with all that being said, I rate Equestria Girls Friendship Games a 7.5 out of 10. See you next time.